Coach Yursich and other guys up there, but just how difficult is it to see the field and just be a play caller from the sidelines?
You don't have as good a perspective, but you get a feel for what's going on in the game. I think being in the press box, it's like playing a video game. When you're down on the field, you feel like you're in it. Both have positives.
Second row left, Bill.
Ryan, we've talked with you a lot this year about, picking and choosing your spots when to run Justin and protecting him. Now that you've gotten to this point, if there was any kind of governor on that in terms of your play calling, is that gone now?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we still have to be really smart with what we do, and when it makes sense, it makes sense. When it doesn't, we'll be smart with that. But we certainly don't want to be, just cavalier about just running them all over the place.
And right next door, Ari.
Ryan, you mentioned that your version of happiness is winning a football game at noon and going home and hanging out with your family and ordering food, which is probably the most important part, right? After a recruiting weekend like you're having this weekend or other bigger ones in the past, is that still possible? Like, do you still make that time?
It's hard, obviously when you have so many people in, your time is limited. But again, we sent out a letter to most of the people who are visiting just to understand this is one of those games you're just not going to get a lot of face time. And we had some tremendous people coming in, but at the same time, there's only so much time you can spend with those guys in a situation like this. And we'll spend a little time after the game, but that'll probably be it until Sunday morning.
Ryan, one follow-up to that, and I think you kind of touched on it there a little bit. I thought it was interesting on Tuesday when you said this isn't that type of visit because it's a big game and that every visit has its own purpose.
Okay.
How thorough are you guys? I'm sure pretty thorough about explaining that to the kids so they understand what type of visit it's going to be. I know maybe it goes without saying there's a game happening, but like when you have an official visit in the summer and you have an official visit now, it's obviously different. How is that communicated, and do kids have an idea of the context of what a certain type of visit is?
I think that it's on the position coaches to let them know that, but we also drafted up a letter to send to the people who are coming, exactly what you're talking about. And that this is November, and one of the biggest games of the entire year, and what the expectations are of this visit. So we actually wrote that down and sent a letter to some of the guys about that.
Far left, Lori.
Coach, during a week like this, do the ones get more snaps in practice because they need to be extra sharp, fewer because the premiums on being refreshed are the same, just for consistency's sake?
The same. Yeah, we kept this routine this week the same. I think the guys like being in a routine and they feel comfortable in it.
Front row right, Austin.
Ryan, you talked a couple times about JK wanting to play more and maybe wasn't happy about missing the entire second half last week. What are those conversations like with him to impress that the stretch run is maybe what matters, or how do those conversations play out?
Last week it played out in the locker room. I said, "What do you think? I'd really not like to play in the second half." He said, "Well, I want to play. I want to run. Give me another series." And I said, "All right. Well, let me talk to the coaches. I just want to see the look in his eye. If he was shutting it down or if he wanted to play." And he had a look in his eye like he wanted to play. And so then we got down on the field, and he's stretching out and moving. And right before the ball got kicked off, I said, "You're out." He just kind of looked down to the ground. And I said, "I only do it because I love you, man." And he said, "Love you too, coach. I appreciate it." And he went on to cheer, his teammates. But that's the competitor in him. And I said, "There's a lot of football to be played," and that was the conversation.
So how do you say no when you see that look in his eye?
Yeah, well, that's when you got to make some hard decisions. That's my job, to make sure that I'm protecting the program and him.
Right next door, Tim.
Yeah, Ryan, you were a quarterback of some repute. When did that moment come in a week where the bucket, information bucket, got overloaded, maybe for you from coaching input, et cetera? And how has that guided you, and especially this year with the first-year starting quarterback? But how has that guided you in what going into a big game? How much Justin really needs to know, et cetera?
It's a great question. It's something you just have to go back on your experiences in your gut, what you know, and try to figure out what that balance is, to figure out what we can execute at a high level and what's too much. And again, that's the art of coaching. And sometimes you think you know and you're wrong. Other times you hit it right on the nose, and that's what we work on all week.
Right next door, Bill.
You guys are obviously number one and statistically in a bunch of defensive categories, and yet B.B. Lander said and Pete Warner said last night that we see the flaws. We don't think we're anywhere near that. What's your take on it? Where are you guys defensively?
Well, I agree. I think that there's a lot to improve on, and we're going to get challenged this week, unlike we've got challenged all year with the skill and with the different schemes that they're going to be bringing. And so we've got to win a line of scrimmage, defeat blocks, and like you said, we certainly haven't played our best game on defense yet.
Third row, middle, Dan.
Ryan, weather forecast for Saturday looking like some rain, cold, maybe a chance of snow. Is that anything that concerns you at all in your prep for Saturday?
Doesn't concern us. We look at it and try to plan ahead, you know. Both teams have to deal with it, so we will deal with it just like we did in the Wisconsin game, and you know, whatever it is, and we'll handle it.
Front row middle, Joey? If not, my bad. Front row left, Doug?
Ryan, as a head coach, what is your thinking on ever allowing a player who is not a senior in eligibility go through senior day festivities if it's pretty obvious that this is his last year at Ohio State?
Yeah, we typically like to do it just for the seniors, and you know, that's something special that, you know, when you put in 4 or 5 years into the program, that you get a chance to do that. You know, for guys that decide early, they typically don't get that opportunity. Not that that's right or wrong or different, it's just our policy.
And a couple weeks in the Maryland game, Kayvon Pope made an interception and ran out of bounds, and Al Washington ran down and just jumped on him and hugged him like crazy. What did you think of a moment like that when you have an assistant coach and a player doing that?
I showed it in the champions meeting and just showed them that that's the excitement, energy that we're looking for. You know, and there was a lot of guys on the sideline who did the same thing. But to see Al and the passion that he coaches with and the energy he coaches with, that's what we want with all of our coaches. And we called it out in the champions meeting, and it was great to see.
Right next door, Nathan?
You guys have obviously been really prolific in the red zone this year as far as scoring touchdowns. I think the only 2 teams ahead of you have had about half as many attempts as you guys have had. When you diagnosed what happened on the goal line stand Rutgers had the other day, were there any common denominators in there that concerned you, or do you just kind of write it off as an anomaly? And
you know, about 4 plays earlier, I wasn't sure what happened. Justin ran, and I thought maybe he got jammed up there, and it was nothing. But at the time, I thought that something had happened, so I got very conservative and ran the ball.
Second row right, Tony?
Ryan, you've been asking the fans to be loud in this one because it alters communications. What's it like calling plays and doing that sort of thing at Penn State when you know that's a crazy crowd? How does it affect you?
Oh, it's huge. So guys being loud when you know, you're at an opposing team's stadium, if you're on offense and you're trying to communicate, it's really hard. And so the louder we can be, the better. And just picture a left tackle who's trying to block Chase Young, who's not on a verbal cadence, he's on a silent cadence. So typically what happens is they have to use some other mechanism to trigger when the snap count happens. And if you're really, really efficient at that, you can be you know, as good as a verbal cadence, but you got to be really on your game. And so, you know, you're either looking in at the ball or you're trying to time it up or all of those things. And so the louder we can get, the harder it makes on their offense. And so especially on 3rd down, but anytime they have the ball, the louder we can be, the harder it is on the offense, and especially on the offensive line who's trying to block our defensive line.
Right behind him, Tom?
Noah Kane, sounds like he's a game time decision. KJ Hamler's been in concussion protocol. How much does that uncertainty with kind of big pieces on their team, how much uncertainty does that uncertainty kind of impact and make your preparation more difficult this week?
And I mean, we're those guys will be playing, and they'll be shocked if they don't. If they don't, we'll adjust, but we're planning on those guys playing.
But in general, when you have something like that where there's maybe a little bit of uncertainty, how much does that actually change?
We just plan on those guys playing, and then we go from there.
Last 2 questions. Far right, Colin?
Justin Hilliard won't be going to the senior day festivities I saw. Has his waiver been approved, and where's he at deciding on sits here?
Yeah, you have to talk to Justin about that, but he certainly has interest in coming back.
And final question. Front row middle, Joey?
Yeah, Ryan, similar line of questioning. CJ Saunders, another guy who could pursue a 6-year. What's the latest with him on that?
Yeah, it's something he's interested in, but there's still a lot to be done before that happens.
Coach, thank you very much.
That's right.
Thank you.
That's right.